Let's talk a little bit about the Shopsmith 18-inch jigsaw and what you need to do if you just bought one of these so that you don't destroy it. Now, a quick, brief description for those of you who do not know what a Shopsmith is. It was a device made by a company in Dayton, Ohio, and basically they have the headstock and they have all kinds of attachments that you can attach to this. And the way it works is on the back side of the headstock is a shaft with a coupler, and then that coupler attaches to whatever device you want to hang onto the end of it. Now, there are also other attachments that hang on the other side, but we're not going to get into this. We're going to talk about the jigsaw. A little bit of a secret here is you can print your own couplers. You don't have to buy them. If you have a 3D printer, they work just fine in PLA, and you can find this pattern on Thingiverse. Just Google Shopsmith coupler. Now, they call this the 18-inch jigsaw because from the back of the neck here to the tip of the blade is 18 inches. That's a pretty good distance for a jigsaw. Now, this particular model is the Jigsaw 18-inch model number 810, and again, it's for a Shopsmith. Now, the features are just what you would expect of any other jigsaw. It has a built-in little compressor in the head up here that blows all your dust away. That's what the tube is for. It is a pinless style, meaning that the blades that you use do not have the pins on the top and the bottom. It's just a straight blade held in by friction from these styles of screws. This particular model has the standard table, and it is adjustable, meaning you can tip it this way and not this way. Now, what we really want to talk about is what you shouldn't do when you first buy one of these. You don't want to fire it up and run it without checking the oil, because you have no idea if the previous person took care of the maintenance on this. And there's an oil bath that sits right here, and in here there are some components that need to be bathed in 10-way oil. You need to make sure that the oil is in here, and we're going to take this one apart and talk about what it looks like inside so you understand how these operate. Now, to make this easier to work on, we're going to loosen up this particular bolt here. It's just an Allen. That'll let us pull the neck off, which will get rid of all of this. We're also going to pull the table off. That just makes things a little lighter and easier to work on. Now, if you were just wanting to add oil, the oil fill screw is underneath this plate. Now, I suspect we may have a problem because I found this glob of silicone that was stuck into the bottom of this tube, and you can see there's a press fit down here, and it must be leaking a little bit. So the original owner tried to stop that leak with this, which tells me there may or may not be any oil inside here. Now, normally with this in its normal vertical position, you would remove this screw here, this bolt, and you would put 10-weight oil until it comes to the level here, because it starts coming back out. Then you would put your cap back on, and that is the level of oil that you need in here to keep the components safe. Now, we're not going to take this off. We're going to rotate it over and pull that cap off, and we'll talk about some of the internals on this thing. And you can see the inside is, well, it's not dry. Everything's kind of moist with oil, like I had oil in it once before. It is really, really nasty. It needs cleaned up. And I'll tell you what typically gets ruined in these is there is kind of a nylon part that you can't really see, but it's down in between here and this plate. And that nylon, it's a white nylon plastic. I assume it probably isn't nylon, but it's some sort of plastic, and it just wears and burns itself out when they run dry. You can buy that part online. I've seen a couple different places where they had some aftermarket. Yeah, I don't know if you can get it from Shopsmith or not, maybe, but I do see a couple aftermarket parts that do fit that. In this case, it's actually fine. There's not hardly any play in anything. Everything seems nice and smooth. It just has an oil leak out the bottom. Now, there is also some bearing seals. I think there was a bulletin mentioned on that with a part number, but if that's leaking, you can replace that as well. But right now, we're going to put a little oil in it, and we'll fire it up and see what it looks like, how it runs and operates. And then we'll go back someday and we'll fix the seal so it doesn't continue to leak out. Now, sorry for the lighting here, but I have had a heck of a time trying to light up all these parts to show you how this actually works. So the bottom of the blade goes into the blade tightener down here that just has a regular screw that you tighten up against another screw to center the blade. So you can back this screw out a little bit if you need to shove the blade that way, and vice versa. There's a little guide here that has a little split in it, and you want to make sure that blade, the back of the blade, rests in that guide. And then there's also a couple of other tubes up here, which is where things get a little bit tricky. There is a tube with a split in it inside another tube, and this bottom screw here lets you loosen the small tube, and the top screw here lets you loosen the bigger tube. And the way you want it set up is the back of the blade needs to rest on this bigger tube, and then the smaller tube needs to just kind of guide the blade. So you need to want it out a millimeter or two. You don't want it up here where the teeth are, because the teeth will tear it up, but you do want it just on the back end, just like this. And then at the top is another Allen that lets you tighten the top. And when I set this up, I usually bring this up all the way, the guide down here, by turning the shaft. And then I put a little bit of tension in here, because you can pull this down. And I put a little tension in it, so there's a little tension on the blade. And then you're ready to cut after you tighten everything up, of course. Now with the plate in, we're ready to do our first cut and see how it works. Do remember that you have a speed dial over here on the Shopsmith head, and you want to keep it in the jigsaw speeds. It says never exceed speed E, and we're going to run it right in between A and B to test it out. And there you have it, a perfectly functioning jigsaw. I'm sure by now you can tell I really like these Shopsmiths. I think they're a great tool for the price. You can find them relatively cheap on the used market if you keep your eyes peeled and you snatch up just the right deal. You can find all the accessories and parts and pieces on eBay and Craigslist and Facebook, and quite honestly, it becomes addictive to find just the right component. I really enjoy it. I've got a headstock that makes a little bit of noise. I'm probably going to tear it apart and fix whatever the noises are in it. But for the most part, it works probably like it did when it was new. If you like these types of videos, please like and subscribe. Take a look at some of my other videos, and at the very least, you might be entertained.